Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second quarter presentation from Ocean Sun here in our new studio at Fornebu, Norway. It has been an eventful quarter, and we'll go through our presentation together with a couple of my colleagues. The topics for today is for new shareholders. We'll go through a little bit the business of Ocean Sun and the short explanation. Then the highlights from the last period, and also the ongoing projects and operations. And also with me today is our Chief Commercial Officer, Alexander Telly, that will tell a little bit more about the market opportunities and the activity internationally in floating solar. And of course, the financials that will be given by the Chief Financial Officer, Carl Lavenius. And then our normal outlook and the priorities going forward. And will be also the opportunity to post questions on this platform directly to the management. Most analysts, I would say all, today agree that solar is the most affordable source among the renewables. In fact, among all the energy sources, it is better than coal-fired power and or on fossil fuel. In order to make this optimal, these are constructed in large solar farms, and of course then you have the problem to find the surface area for the solar farms, and then you have the advent of floating solar, because then you also have the ability to put these on the water surfaces, which then avoid the problems with taking up land area, where you have the competition with agriculture, urbanizations, cities, and other recreational uses. It is now a fast-growing market. We see a rapid development of floating solar farms internationally. And in this market, Ocean Sun has positioned itself with its unique technology. And we are now experiencing an extensive project pipeline in this field. We have chosen a very scalable asset-light business model, where we essentially are the architects, the designers of these systems, and then we help the deployers and the EPCs that are financing the systems. And we deliver the complete drawings, the analysis, and also assist in the construction of the systems. And with our revenue is then based on a small license fee on this patented technology. We are now an ever-increasing group of people, a team with good experience from the photovoltaic and the maritime and the business sectors. So a few of the highlights during the first half year. Picture shown here is testing in simulated rough waters up at the SINTEF Ocean laboratories in Trondheim. First of all, we'll touch upon the project with Statkraft at the Banja hydropower reservoir in Albania, the commissioning of that system, and also the incident that followed shortly after, or I might say accident. Also the status on our ongoing projects and that activity, and as I mentioned also, we will get some slides from our Chief Commercial Officer, Alexander Telly, on the new opportunities that are now emerging. Touch upon our collaboration with research institutes and and the verifications on when it comes to the actual technology. And also there are some news about the patent situation. And also present the new members of our growing team. In Albania, this was of course a very large event for Ocean Sun. We, as many know, we constructed our up to now largest floating system at this hydropower reservoir. It was a relatively large event in Albania. It was opened by the Minister of Energy, Ms. Belinda Baluku, in the grand opening in early June. Shortly after, weeks after this, we experienced a very strong wind. This was essentially a tornado that erupted on the lake and caused a severe damage, or essentially damaged this system. Normally, tornadoes are considered non-existent in the Balkan region, also in Scandinavia. You can have them in Central Continental Europe, Germany and France, etc. But these were not anticipated in this area. They erupt in warm and humid conditions, and we also many have noticed that Europe has experienced some extraordinary weather this summer. There was also a tornado in Serbia, which is also is a completely new phenomenon. But we have taken these new precautions. We will come back and construct this system. We have a good collaboration with Statkraft, and there is nothing fundamentally with our technology that cannot adapt to also this type of conditions. So that will be done going forward. The whole project, of course, will be scrutinized by now third-party institutions and also certification bodies that will review the final design. But we have a good hope to put up this within the year and also to complete the full 2 megawatt planned system together with Statkraft. About the ongoing project, this is from the Philippines, talking about wind. This is an area prone to the typhoons. It's in the almost exactly in the middle of the typhoon belt in Asia. The typhoons are different from the tornadoes, of course. Typhoons are vortex is measured in kilometers, while the tornado is a more narrow. It's a matter of meters in diameters. So, we now celebrated this summer 2 years of operation. Working flawlessly and been through 2 of the monsoon season, and there are approximately 20 typhoons in each season on average going through this area. We are also upgrading and implementing new developments in the PV panel part on this system continuously. And we hope, of course, that SNAP, the SN Aboitiz power company, will at one point execute their plans on the expansion into the 67 megawatt peak possibility that is on this reservoir. That, of course, is a relatively large system, which will then consist of maybe up to 150 of these floaters on this lake. Also, an important project for Ocean Sun is the collaboration with the Fred. Olsen Renewables and also InnoSea, the naval architects in France, and the Ploucan research facility at the Gran Canaria, and also and the ITC. This is in a way completely new area where it's essentially open sea with conditions that can have waves up to 10 meters in height, and then an adapted system, a ruggedized construction to cope with these wave conditions. And up to now, I think shown in the previous picture, the basin laboratory tests up in Trondheim is showing some promising results, even for these adverse conditions. Also worth mentioning that the DNV also is associated with this together with the SINTEF Ocean. The plans will be that the system will be deployed early next year. And of course, within this European Commission project called BOOST, there is also great plans, of course, for the commercial exploitation of this technology. This can opens up for the coastal areas and typically to use these either directly into the grid or to fuel or to power desalination plants in the production of fresh water, or the electrolyzer fuels such as hydrogen or derivatives, ammonia, for instance, which many believe will be the new fuel for the long haul shipping industry. Yes, on the intellectual property department, we now only a few days ago we received the message from the European Patent Office in Munich, which is then the governing body for the European countries, the so-called Patent Cooperation Treaty, which all member states in Europe are part of, that we were granted the patent for our membrane technology. And we now, at the moment, we then hold granted patents in the US and also in Europe. These are considered the most, let's say, difficult institutions to grant your patent. So this is a good development. A few words about our collaborationship on the research and development together with the Institute for Energy Technology. It's been a very good partner for Ocean Sun for over many years in several projects. They have just recently published some papers. I'd like to mention the one in progress in photovoltaics, which is among the best reputed scientific journals. And that paper essentially verifies this cooling effect that we have on the membrane, which is a very important, almost the gist of our technology. They are also published in the Journal of Solar Energy. We also have, together with DNV, a small test facility in Singapore. And at this site, we compare directly our floating membrane technology together with the more mainstream floating PV technology, and thirdly, also comparing with the traditional ground mount system. And what we see there is that we excel when comparing these technologies and have a markedly better performance due to this cooling effect, where we reduce the cell temperature, increase the voltage, and thereby have a better energy yield. In this competitive landscape, I think it's worth showing this slide, because here the National University of Singapore And the Sirius is a research institution. They have divided these floating solar technologies into 4 different categories. On the upper left, maybe the most common one, dominated by the Chinese company Sungrow and also the French Silitaire. These are blow-molded, high-density polyethylene floats, where you essentially place a solar panel on each of these, and then they are interconnected into a large lattice and put on the water. Secondly, you have the more slightly larger modules, where you have some kind of pontoon and then beams, either aluminum or galvanized steel, on top of this, and then you place the racks of the solar panels on these. And you have several companies that promote that type of technology. And we have been put in the 3rd category, and there we are alone as with the membrane technology. And you also have some companies that are looking into the ferrocement floaters to provide the buoyancy for large systems. So in order to grasp this situation a little bit, the quest is to facilitate a large surface on the water, and thereby, of course, drive the cost to the minimum, and that will be the winning technology in the end. In our opinion, we think that the membrane technology with this very special vessel, which provides a huge deck surface with minimum use of material, will be the best approach to this technology problem. So therefore, we think we are very well positioned in this competition. Also, in order to facilitate this huge industry, solar panels are now produced by the hundreds of millions, predominantly in China. And we are now collaborating with the large tier 1 producers of these solar panels. We are using the latest technology. You can see an example here from, I believe, yesterday in the Strait of Johor, outside on our offshore test site there, with the new solar panels. These are high-powered units, half-cut cell, and the latest cell technologies. Another important component are the textiles or the membranes. We collaborate with multiple of the textile manufacturers and adapting the membrane to fit our purpose, and the composition and the durability tests and longevity of these systems are, of course, also important. So we do a lot of work in that area. And also worth mentioning, on the power electronics, you now see that the inverter manufacturers, in this example, Huawei, are now also improving their cabinets. They are making a better ingress protection and adapting these products now for floating solar, with the slightly more humid environment, of course, compared to on land. So now these factories are fine-tuned high volume production units, and we are, of course, very pleased that these large companies consider our technology and are willing to adapt these manufacturing lines. So we are in position to produce these at a very high volume, because we do make some small modifications to the solar panels. You see the junction boxes, and the connectivity is placed on the sunny side of the panel, and also we have this special attachment feature that is put in towards the membrane. Also worth mentioning, nice building on the left. This is our new headquarters in Oslo, Norway, nicely situated by the Oslo fjord. Unfortunately, not yet any floating solar in the Oslo fjord, but maybe one day. And also like to show, I think, Nenad Keserik, our new Chief Operating Officer that was introduced in the last quarter presentation, is relatively new, of course. And we have Anders Habostad, naval architect, with a very good experience from the numerical modeling of and in the hydrodynamics field. And also in our Shanghai office, we are expanding here with Miss Bai Wu, which was started up some months ago. And we also have recruitment in process for new project managers, and other positions will also follow. I will now give the word to the Chief Commercial Officer, Alexander Tellier, and maybe introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Børge. My name is Alexander Tellier. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Ocean Sun. I've been with the company for since the end of 2019. And my background is primarily from fast-moving consumer goods, having worked with Coca-Cola internationally, as well as British American Tobacco. And I find this journey with Ocean Sun so far has been extremely interesting and rewarding. And of course, with the membrane technology that we own, there's some opportunities to also do some more branding than traditionally in an industry like this. What I would like to do is to take you through some of the opportunities that we see for Ocean Sun, but also a little bit on the overall market. And I think, as Børge mentioned, there is an extreme high demand for renewable in general. We certainly see that floating solar is picking up tremendously. Every projection that we see has multiple gigawatts projected, both from the tenders that we see and from the projections from different institutions. So the market certainly is plentiful, primarily driven a little bit like Børge mentioned. There's scarcity of land that can be used for different purposes than renewable energy. We also see a lot of initiatives countrywide when it comes to carbon neutral initiatives, which certainly drives this and brings larger players and institutions in the field. And I think finally also, which is important to mention, is that the cost overall for floating solar certainly is coming down to the level of a ground-mounted system, giving the floating solar both the positioning and the cost element, which can drive this industry tremendously moving forward. Just to look a little bit on some of the projects that we're working on and some of the niches, obviously very applicable to the unique ocean-sick technology. And these are just some examples, but also represent some of the projects that we are currently involved in. And I think it goes without saying, if you look at the rainforest in Brazil or in other places, you have to go floating solar for this to make sense for both Brazil and for the rest of the world in order to get the carbon neutrality which is needed. We have several projects in the rainforest areas. Hydropower dams, certainly been mentioned before. It is probably the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to floating solar. You have an existing grid and you can connect to close to where the electricity is actually being used very efficiently, and you can basically use the whole dam as a battery, running the turbines at night and floating solar during daytime. In addition, you can also say that the floating solar reduces some of the algae, which certainly is appreciated by the hydropower operators, as well as reducing evaporation, which could be important for some areas, certainly in areas, for instance, like in Africa. Ocean near shore, here's an example from Greece. I'll get back to that a little bit later as well, but of course Ocean Sun has the solution, which is probably the only one today that can really work in the offshore area. And we're the only one certified by the MVGL to basically operate in the environments. So we see a lot of areas where this could be applicable moving forward. Densely populated areas, places like Singapore, areas like Manila, Hong Kong. Where else can they go but to the water level, where we can offer obviously a solution for that. Multiple of the island states. Ocean Sun has the uniqueness as well when it comes to benefits in logistics, that we can offer this without the multiple platoons that needs to be offered. Instead of having Lots of containers, we can deliver one membrane at a time, which obviously gives a big, tremendous impact for the island states. We also see a lot of growing initiatives, primarily in Europe, when it comes to the water-filled mines. Germany is one good example, and we are in multiple projects where this becomes applicable. I know there's a slight delay in the slides here, but I'd like to take you to a little bit how we operate geographically. You can see the regions that we are in. I think if the slides now has come up, we basically have divided the world into different regions. And I think also you can see that Ocean Sun surely is truly a global company. All the countries colored here are projects where we are currently involved in a different level and different stages of the projects. Some a little early and some where pilots are expected very, very soon. If we start from off the left side, you can see the Americas. We certainly see a lot of development in South America, especially in Brazil and Colombia. In that connection, we have also partnered up with a very reputable firm in Brazil with extensive experience and knowledge of renewable and also floating solar to assist in the multiple projects that we see in Brazil. And there's a lot of initiatives also in Colombia. Out of one, we work with one of the major utility companies and are expecting to see some pilots in the area very, very shortly. When it comes to Europe, certainly we've seen big development over the last years, also moving from some more private initiatives to now the large-scale utility companies really coming into the field. Of course, the EU and EU directives for increased carbon neutrality comes into play, but overall Ocean Sun is very well fit to cater to this market. I think we have mentioned our collaboration with the Quantum Group in Greece, which is going as planned. We are anticipating a pilot by the end of this year and another one by the beginning of next year. We work extensively in Holland. We see developments in Portugal, in Spain, Turkey, and Italy. So there's certainly some very interesting and where we have come fairly far in the projects. When it comes to Africa, I just saw an interesting factor the other day that if we cover almost 1% of the hydropower dams in Africa, you can basically produce 20 gigawatts of power. And obviously shows a tremendous opportunity for floating solar in Africa. We are currently engaged in projects in Kenya and also in South Africa. And we see tremendous opportunities. And we also see now more and more the support of larger institutional investors and development banks coming into play to assist in the renewable drive for the African continent. Moving on to the east, where we also have two offices. We have an office in Shanghai and we have an office in Singapore. China still is the dominant player when it comes to both of the installation of floating solar, as well as what Børge mentioned, that some of the main suppliers, especially when it comes to the panels and inverters, transformers, China is important for us for many reasons. And we are currently involved in China with two consortiums, which we expect to have ready agreements very shortly, expecting pilots by the end of this year and also turning eventually into some multiple utility scale project in China. When it comes to the Northeast Asia as well, we certainly have and have commented before on South Korea. It's been delays to the Saemangeum projects, but it seems now that it's coming well underway. And all the indications that we have is that we now are able to put two pilots in place in Korea, one in the Saemangeum project, and hopefully to bring this up to at least 100 megawatt level that we talked about earlier. So it's now well under progress. And in addition to that, for the region, we certainly see activities in Japan, and we have projects also in Taiwan. When it comes to Southeast Asia, driven from our Singapore office, obviously interesting development. Again, as Børge mentioned, the extension and expansion to the Magat Dam in the Philippines. We also see additional areas in the Philippines around Laguna Lake in the Manila Bay, where we are well positioned and come fairly far with one of the global EPC and utility companies to work and develop a pilot there shortly. We also see development certainly in countries like Vietnam and Thailand and Malaysia, where we are currently involved in projects at different stages. And finally, also Singapore certainly is a hotbed. They have no choice, as I mentioned before, when they need renewable power, they need to go to the water. In addition to that, Singapore obviously has the research institutions that come a long way when it comes to floating solar. It can be a driver for many of the other developments that we can see in Southeast Asia as well. I think finally, also well connected to the Ocean Sun technology are the different island states, which I mentioned, where we probably have the best offer when it comes to delivering and installation at these sites. And we are currently involved both in the Seychelles, Mauritius, and the Maldives. And in addition to that, in the Pacific Islands, we are in some exotic places where Ocean Sun probably is the only solution that can offer renewable energy to replace the current diesel generators today. So I think that summarizes the fantastic opportunities that we see forward in Ocean Sun. And happy to take some questions later on. And from now, I think I'll leave the word to our CFO, Karl Lawenius, to take us a little bit to the financials and the status of the company. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alexander. We certainly hope that the projects will come along shortly. And very interestingly is that when they do, the negative cash flow will quickly turn. Just looking at a relatively small project of 50 megawatt would generate revenues above 20 million, which then will, of course, contribute to a positive result. Looking at the numbers for Q2 and the first half year, we had a revenue of 2 million in Q2 and 3.6 in the first half year. This is primarily related to the Boost project and other contribution projects supported by Norwegian government. We had a result of negative 4.1 million and 7.4 million in H2. It's a little bit higher than previous periods due to the upscaling of the business. As Børge mentioned, we have hired 3 more resources in addition to some consultants tapping in on certain projects. We also had some recruitment fees for the new employees, in addition to the upgrade cost on the Magat system. And we should mention that this is not contractually required, but it's a system that we follow close and think it's very important to show the benefits of our membrane technology with the latest technology available. So that's why we went ahead with that upgrade. The cash position is still very strong, with 89.3 million in liquidity going out of June. So with that, we are very well positioned for future growth and to get the projects that Alexander mentioned. And that was all. Back to Børge.
Thank you very much, Karl. So just finally, before we move on to the Q&A, our company is set to of course, protect and maintain our intellectual property with this unique technology. We will not rest, we will drive still a continuous development and fine-tune our product offering. And we seek out the global partnerships. We saw the multitude of opportunities that was shown earlier. and we aim ourselves towards the utility sector and the large-scale floating solar projects. Doing so, we will, with the royalty or license fee model, we will receive significant revenue from that activity, but also consider to enter partnerships or being a small stakeholder in the special purpose vehicles that are typically established in these individual projects. So I think now it's time for us to move to the Q&A session. So we will try to manage this, I believe, in the back office here, and yes, to post the questions. So
yes, as normal, I will just read the questions that have been posted. And if you have additional questions, just keep on posting them and we'll bring them up.
Yep.
So first question from Magnus Solheim. Thank you for the presentation. Can you give some further detail into the future for the development of the Banja project? When do you expect to have the project fully operational?
Hello, Magnus. I think it was covered in the slides. So we expect to put up the first one within the year and to complete the full 4 floater system next year.
And the next follow-up question, can you give any guidance for what to expect for 2022? Do you have how much capacity can you install in 2022 if everything is going according to plan?
Yeah, that's the big question, of course. If only, I would say, a fraction of all that early stage activity that we are involved in, if this materialize, it can reach some very impressive numbers. But it remains to be seen. We know from experience that these projects are kind of sluggish. They often need governmental permits to be put in place. Some of the environmental studies that are conducted takes a lot of time. So we see that it also takes a lot of time to develop the projects. But we may see a ketchup bottle effect on this, of course. So it's very exciting going forward. Yeah.
And then how is the current logistic challenges and higher panel price affecting your timeline and cost estimates on the projects?
Yeah, the incident in Suez, of course, and the lagging. So you do see a container, but this is actually in favor, I would say, for Ocean Sun, because we have this very lean logistical. We can put one of these huge membrane inside one 40-foot container, while our competitors struggle with large volumes and up to 10-15 times the number of containers. But of course, we do notice some hike in price on the containers. And also, I think the question also was about the panels. You do see a slightly higher price on panels, I think mainly caused by the glass industry. But now lately also, yeah, coming back, I think. Solar is still the best source of energy production.
Let's see, can you comment on the timeline for the 100 megawatt peak in South Korea? Can you disclose the customer? Is 100 megawatt potential, or is it this a project that you can expect to secure and commission in 2022?
This will come in tranches, I believe. Like we know, the overall or the envisioned system is 2.1 gigawatts. It's an enormous number. This will be, yeah, perhaps the largest solar plant in the world. And we are not in position to disclose these companies, but I think we can say that we are in discussions with the major players in South Korea on this, and I think it will be a stepwise process and starting out with a pilot or demonstrator to show. Semanjung tidal flood it's tricky waters. It's fairly large, and looking at the free fetch on the water, you can have relatively large waves in that area, and then so this will be very exciting, and also this will be a lot of local content in South Korea. And unfortunately, today we are not in position to travel to South Korea. The personal interaction, of course, is important in that country, and we are just waiting now for the borders to open to start the business there.
Can you give any guidance on operating costs going forward?
I think that was, you can see maybe along the lines that was shown by Carl, but of course growing with the further more employees.
And I think if the question refers to the operating costs, the operation and maintenance cost of a system in operation, then you would see basically on the same line as other floating or solar systems, around 1% per of the capex per year. There's no indication that we would have higher operating costs than another floating solar or floating solar, rather the opposite.
Yeah, I would say it's even some potential benefits on the automation and for robotic cleaning systems on these very flat systems.
And then we have another question here. Have you noticed any difference from the client demand side since the Banya incident?
No, maybe you would like to answer this, Alexander. You have the contact with the customer side.
It's obviously a very good question, and I would certainly say that we have experienced even increasing demand in general, and I think it, as Berg also mentioned, shows that the confidence in the marketplace and the fundamental belief that we have the structural integrity to build and install a floating solar system pretty much in most places where it's applicable. So we have only seen increased demand during the last 2-3 months, so it doesn't affect the overall setup of the business. No, not at all.
Very good. And then how does it affect your business being located in Norway with not very ideal condition for PV in general?
I guess I can take that too. Well, certainly Norway is not the most suitable country for PV, given the sun irradiation, and certainly not for Ocean Sun with its horizontally placed panels and very little tilt. What we do have that certainly benefits us is a multiple of things. One, we have obviously a long history of being in the ocean. We have an aquaculture that's been around in Norway for more than 30 years, which is a lot of the foundations for how we have constructed and designed our systems. We can draw on all the research and learnings from that, and there's a lot of institutions in Norway, research universities working in this area that we certainly benefit from. And I think also finally that we are fortunate in Norway as well to have some of the largest renewable players, which we are working with. One obviously being Statkraft, which is the largest renewable company in Europe. Scatec as a developer, certainly also one of the largest players in installing PV systems and installations, and of course one of our partners as well.
Very good. And then there's a question about the customer or the project development during the last year. How have the type of customers developed during the years?
Sure, I can take that as well. Well, I would say during it's an interesting development because floating solar in general, it's a new industry. It's an innovative industry. What we've seen in my close to 2 years in the business is going more from, let's say, the early adopters that understood this business as consultants or private initiatives, and now certainly moving into the larger players, the large utility companies, the oil companies are coming into play. So the overall development is moving from smaller initiative and a great idea to now actually seeing that this works, this makes economic sense, and Ocean Sun is certainly well positioned to contribute to that part. So we are getting into a more mature industry, which certainly benefits us and the project sizes moving forward and the players that we work with.
Very good. And then we have one final question about when Ocean Sun will break even. And I think perhaps I can answer that.
Excellent, Carl.
Yeah, it's as Børge mentioned, a bit hard to forecast exactly when the projects will come into play. But as I mentioned before, the license revenues from only small projects, like a 50 megawatt project, would be above 20 million. So when we see now in 2022 the slightly larger projects coming in, starting to be constructed, I think we'll be able to show positive numbers very soon. And let me go back on the other side and check if there were any further questions. I think that was the last one. Børge, perhaps you want to conclude?
Yes, thank you, Carl and Alexander. And I think then if there are no further questions, I think we will round off this session for the second quarter presentation from Ocean Sun. Thank you for listening.